Welcome back everybody to another exciting video. Today we're going to tackle the rear brakes on my 2003 Silverado after AutoZone finally delivered the brakes thanks to FedEx. So let's go ahead and jump into that. Okay, so just like last week's video, I'm going to go over a few safety items that you're going to need before you hop into a brake job. A couple things, just like last week's video: a pair of gloves if you don't want to get dirty, a pair of safety glasses. You're gonna grab yourself a pair of jack stands if your vehicle does not have any, and most of the vehicles out there don't have jack stands. And make sure they're rated for your vehicle. Mine are 3-ton from Harbor Freight. And the last thing that you want to get if your vehicle doesn't have a jack is make sure you get a jack rated for your vehicle. Now, I like these jacks because it's a little bit easier than the jacks that come with the vehicles. If you do not have a jack like this, your vehicle should have one. Just make sure you do use a pair of jack stands because these aren't meant to hold vehicles up for a long period of time. So let's go ahead and get the wheels off and get this brake job started. Just like last week's video, you're going to need a few special tools to get this job done. Starting with your breaker bar and your 22mm socket to be able to get the wheels off. Now, just for purpose of time, I already got the jack stands, and the wheels under the vehicle. I have the lug nuts off and the tires off. You're going to need yourself a set of sockets. Get yourself a 3/8 ratchet with a 13mm socket. Get yourself a screwdriver to break free some rust. You can also get yourself a pair of brass or aluminum brushes. Get yourself a mallet, preferably metal, not rubber, and these two tools, both ironically from Snap-on. This tool actually might help me a little better. This tool, they're both caliper piston compressors, and special tools that you don't really 100% need. You could do this all by hand, but you can get yourself a 3/8 battery powered gun or a 3/8 battery powered ratchet. You don't have to buy those, but since I already have them, I figured I'd show you, and it's nice to have. So we're gonna go ahead and get over to the brakes and show you a few things. Oh yeah, before I head over to the brakes, I forgot. We need one very important thing to get this job done. So just like last week, I got the jack underneath the vehicle, I got the jack stands on the rear differential, and just for an extra precaution, I got the tires underneath the body or the bed of the truck, just in case anything decides it wants to fail. I also have the jack underneath the rear pumpkin, just again for extra precaution. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get these brakes apart, and I'm going to send you over to my other correspondent, and he's going to talk about a vital part of the brake system that you should always keep an eye on and just maintain. So over to him. Thank you, Daniel. Welcome everybody to Automotive Information. So today we're going to talk about one of the most vital part of the braking system, and that is this contraption right here. This is your brake reservoir, your master cylinder, and your brake booster. Most, if not all, vehicles on the road today have this type of system. Some of them have a different style, but pretty much the same process all across the board. Again, this is your brake fluid reservoir. Underneath of it is your master cylinder, and behind it is your vacuum brake booster cylinder. Every vehicle has a max or a min and a max line on your brake reservoir. The reasoning for that is so that you don't build up too much pressure inside your master cylinder to where you can cause a leak. A few things you want to check while you're doing a brake system is: one, open up your fluid cap and check to see the fluid level. If your fluid level is a little bit too high, chances are when you push the pistons back, it's going to leak out, and that just means that you had too much fluid in your reservoir to begin with. Another thing to do is to check the seal underneath, make sure it's not dry, rot, or cracked. Otherwise, you can get some fluid or some air in your brake fluid. Now, the brake fluid is hygroscopic, which means it can retain moisture, which is really bad in a brake system. If you get moisture in your brake system, it starts to eat the brake lines from the inside out, and that's what causes you to have brake fluid loss. So again, just make sure you check it anytime you're doing brake service or anytime you're underneath the hood. Just go around and check your fluids. So till next time, and back to you, Daniel. All right, everybody, and welcome back. So I got the brake caliper off and the brake caliper bridge off, and we are sitting at the rotor. Now, I said that you're possibly going to need a hammer for a special tool. Sometimes the rotor will come right off, so if you give it a little bit of a tap, it'll come right off. This is called the drum and hat rotor, just because the parking brake sits on the inside of the rotor. Now, while you have your rotor off, what you want to do is you want to take a look at your parking brake system. As you can see, I don't have any parking brake shoe left on this side. It would normally go all the way around, but we're going to go ahead and take a peek at the other side, where I already have that off as well, to show you what the parking brake shoe looks like. As you can see, actually it doesn't go all the way around, it goes halfway around. So that's the parking brake shoe, and it's basically called a horseshoe. So while you have the rotors off, you want to take a look at that. Now we're going to press the pistons in, we're going to get the rotors all set up and everything ready to go. One last thing, so you're going to have two 13mm bolts that you're going to need to take off, and you're also going to have two, I think they're 17 or 18. I got to take a look at what my socket is, but I'll let you know in the description. If you guys like this video and you want to see more, go ahead, hit that like button, subscribe, go ahead and comment, and feel free to share with your friends to help me grow my videos. So, alright, so let's talk about the brakes after I had them already all apart. Not every vehicle is made the same. Every vehicle has different options, and mine is no different than any other vehicle. On the rear of a Chevy Silverado, they have two options for the calipers. They have a single piston and they have a dual piston. Anytime you order parts for your vehicle, you have to make sure you know which options there is. Otherwise, you may get the wrong parts. And a good habit is, if you've done your brakes in the past, you know what brakes they are, is to make sure you take apart one side when you get your brakes, just to know if they're the right size. So I got my rotor right here, my new one, and I got my old one. And you want to make sure you butt them up against each other and they match. You take the hub and you butt them up against each other, make sure they match. And a good habit too is to put them side by side like this and make sure they match. Now, again, they might be a little off because the pad may grind down the rotor a little bit, the surface of the rotor. So it might be a tiny bit off, but that's okay. So, for people wondering, the brake parts for the rear of the Silverado are from AutoZone Duralast 55066DL. And the brake pads are MKD792. And another thing about the brake pads to check is make sure when you order them, you get the brake shims. So these do not come with brake shims or the brake hardware. And what I mean by that is where your pad sits. These pieces right here, they're metal shims, they're anti-rattle clips, whatever you want to call them. There is also an anti-rattle clip on the back of the caliper. Again, very self-explanatory. Anti-rattle, keeps it from rattling, keeps it from making noise. So we're gonna get all this together Oh, also get yourself a can of brake parts cleaner. I got this from Walmart, it's just left over. Spray your rotor down a little bit, get the mineral oil off, that way you don't get any noises from the rotors touching, or the pads touching the rotors. So let's go ahead and get this all together, and I'll show you guys the finished product. Now while you're doing all this work, a good habit to get into is taking a wire brush and clean up the hardware if you did not get new hardware. Another good thing to check is the slide pins. The slide pins like to get moisture in them if they're not completely sealed with the dust boot. So what you want to do is you want to take them out, look at them. If they ain't got no grease on them, put some grease on them. If you don't have any grease, you can always go back and put some grease on it later. Now, putting this all together, I don't have torque specs. Most of you, unless you're actually looking on your computer system, don't have the torque specs readily available to do your brakes. So just make sure they're tight. And Chevy calls for you to put some Loctite on the brake bolts, just because they do like to rattle loose. I put anti-seize on it just to make sure that they come loose, and it just makes it a little bit easier in the future while doing brake jobs. And since it's my own vehicle, I don't have to listen to you keyboard warriors. This is just a helpful tip for people trying to do the brakes. So again, let's get all this stuff on and I'll show you guys the final product. Alright, so I feel like I keep saying I got one more thing for you guys why I'm doing the brakes, and it's just not really efficient, but I'm just gonna do it anyway. In the beginning of the video, I had shown you guys two different style brake piston caliper tools. This one, and let me grab the other one. This one. If your piston is too far out, chances are it will not fit into the caliper to be able to push it in. So that's why they made this. If you do not have either, then I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what you're doing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this tool to push my piston in. And what you want to do is you want to feel for any resistance. If there is resistance, then chances are you might have an issue with your pistons. Now mine are a little tight, again, because it's an older vehicle. So I'm gonna eventually have to do the calipers. And then what you can do, go ahead, break it loose. And another thing too, with your brake pads, they have these things on here called squealers. When the brake pad gets low, it touches the rotor, and it lets you know that you're gonna need brake soon. It's not a exact science, but it helps you know that you should have a few thousand miles left on your brakes, so you should get them done. Okay, so I accidentally skipped a couple steps. I didn't show you guys the ending result, but I got the tires on, and I want to tell you one last thing. One very important thing you need to do before you even put the tires on is you want to hit the brake pedal to get the pressure back to the pistons. So hit your brake pedal a couple times till it feels back to normal, what it used to feel before you actually pushed in those pistons. Because what happens is when you push those pistons in, it pushes the pistons, or pushes the fluid back to the reservoir, and you need to get that fluid back to your calipers. I know I forgot to mention a few other things in the last video, which I want to talk about real quick. When you're doing services on your vehicle, make sure that you're on a flat surface. That way your vehicle can't roll away. And if you do have a front wheel drive vehicle or a rear wheel drive vehicle, Or, yeah, make sure you chock the wheels that aren't your drive vehicles, or drive wheels. So, thank you all for watching. Till next time, deuces.